Finance on NAF's YouTube channel, where first and foremost, I want to invite you to participate. I'm going to be moderating questions and feeding to our presenters as we have time throughout. While you're on YouTube, I hope you'll browse some of the video content that alumni and industry partners have been producing over the last several weeks as ways of encouraging our aspiring leaders in academies all over the country. We offer them over YouTube so that anyone, if you know folks in your community, in your family who are seeking resources for continued work-based learning and planning in this time of pandemic, we invite you to join us. Without further ado, I want to welcome JD Hoye.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, I'm JD Hoye. I'm the CEO of NAF. And I guess I want to orient you to this YouTube opportunity around what happens when good people just reach out to find out how they're doing, and great staff people take it and turn it into something bigger than just a conversation. So shout out to Helen Blanche, who took a series of phone calls that I was doing and turned it into an opportunity to broaden a network of partners to solve problems. At the end of the day, for me, leadership matters. You know, the old saying of watch what they say, watch what they do. If they don't match, watch what they do. NAF has always been about the power of a public-private partnership. And in this moment of a pandemic, we're all in the same space together, having to figure out how to make sure that the values that we bring to the table around partnerships and equity and access is accomplished in this very challenging time. So we thought that one of the first questions on the leadership series that we ought to talk about is around technology and connectivity. But I want to give a shout out to that which allows us to do this, which is the Friedman Family Foundation, who has always believed in leadership mattering in the core of really changing how teaching and learning happens, and that young people can bring new excitement to learning by connecting with employers in powerful ways. So I'm excited to have 4 examples of leaders in our network, and there are many more out there, but I want you to get to know them the way I know them. So first of all, we've got Matt Zielinski, who's the president of North America for Lenovo, a NAF board member as well. Awesome guy. We honored him at a benefit that we did, and my favorite part of Matt was a student who was doing a fireside chat with him challenged him and said, hey, so you have such a great idea, give me an internship. And sure enough, Matt turned around and did that. So it's a statement of who he is. He walks the talk. He was challenged by a young person. As I understand it, Matt, you still have a relationship to this day with that individual, and I think it will change his life for the future. So a great example of what good leadership that's authentic, that walks the talk, looks like. We've got Yvonne Durant, who's the Chief Academic Officer for Dallas ISD. And this is a woman who, I have to say, lives the passion of system change for benefiting all young people. So I met Dr. Durant, and we jumped into a conversation almost immediately around how do we change the system to make sure that it's fair and equitable for all? And how do we take this moment where technology is so much better than it was 10 years ago to actually make it the bridge to the future for more young people? And this is a woman who spent 50 years, could have retired, did retire, got pulled back, and is so committed to system change that she's willing to keep in the fight. And it's not, as they say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so I'm very, very pleased to have Dr. Durant with us as well. We also have with us Nicki, although I believe she's going to be calling in with some technology issues, but Nicki's been with Verizon as the Chief Product Development Officer for Verizon and has been on the STEM committee for NAF for, oh my God, Nicki, I think it's been almost 10 years, and really helped us think about the power of STEM in relationship to the content that we build for schools. But Nicki is one of those people who believes fundamentally in the role of internships in delivering core content and inspiring young people to imagine a new future and understand that even in this moment of a pandemic, that it was worth it to think about virtual internships. Just because they can't come into the office, there's still an opportunity to engage them in real work-based learning opportunities, even through a technology-based strategy. I think the jury's still out as to whether it can fully replace the power of the personal, but I do think it has huge benefit and opportunity, and we're very blessed to have Nicki on our team. And then last but not least is Art McCoy, Superintendent of Jennings School District in Missouri. Art has been just a cheerleader for NAF and driving for the 100% of everything. 100% of the kids get internships, 100% of the kids go to college, 100% of people graduate. He's all over, let's get it to 100%. And Art has been just this masterful kind of high energy cheerleader who has seen the power of partnership between employers with worldwide technology and Jennings School District, and has proven that you can get it done if your heart's in it. And it's a true partnership between industry and education. So I'm thrilled that everyone's here. And I want this to be intimate. I want this to be a dialogue. I don't want it to be a lecture series. So what I guess I would pitch out there is I would frame the two fundamental questions that I started with when I called around to a set of our districts. So it's early March, everything is shutting down. Schools are starting to talk about closing for the year. Industry, people are being laid off, unemployment's going through the ceiling, people are stressed. And so I made some calls around the network, and I kept getting these really interesting comments around opportunity. So I was really impressed by industry leaders and educators that could have been paralyzed in the moment, instead talking about the opportunity that it presented itself. That for 30 years we've been talking about advancing technology into the teaching and learning space, and a pandemic caused our system to have to respond immediately. And it was really inspiring to hear the number of people, rather than just saying, oh my God, we got to close everything down, turned it on its head and instead said, what can we do? How do we make this happen? So that was the positive. The negative was when I found out that so many of our young people may actually have only one device in their household to actually use for the opportunities that were being presented from the educational system through technology. And the good news is we had great partners like Verizon who offered free connected data for several months that allowed these families to have access to content. But there are long-term questions that I still have around whether or not we are going to be able to lean in on the equity agenda that we care so much about if we can't connect 100% of our young people to these opportunities. So let me just pitch that out there. Start with Matt and just ask the question from a content perspective. You're somebody who's been in sales and you lead Lenovo and you've done masterful things with MIT to help us build the content around app development and how to inspire young people. What are some of the aha moments that you felt as a result of this pandemic and this shutdown of schools?
Well, first of all, good to see you as always. And as you were talking, it literally took me right back to when this all hit the fan in about the early March timeframe. And for the first time ever, you know, as a tech person, you literally felt that what you now do is a matter of life and death. And so even before we get to all the noble things around remote learning, the very first thing as a company, as an industry, frankly, we did was we dropped everything to try to play some small part in the front lines. And that is a very small part relative to the rest of the healthcare ecosystem, et cetera. But we immediately diverted every amount of equity, financial resources, people to making sure that we had the right technology to the front lines for diagnosis, for virtual rounding, to play some part in taking frontline healthcare workers 20, 30, 40 feet away from potential COVID victims, et cetera. So all of a sudden you were just immediately immersed in, oh my gosh, I've got to get technology out there to literally save lives. And then, you know, throughout the course of getting cases to go down and hospitalizations to go down, and even in tandem with that, it became a lot about, okay, school's officially closed. And now we have to make sure we get technology into the hands that need it the most. And, you know, it's funny, coincidentally, our tagline as a company has, for the last couple of years, been smarter technology for all. We talk a lot about intelligent transformation and how we want to fundamentally change the way people live, work, play, and learn for the better of all humanity. And that we always live that. And there was a bit of marketing rhetoric in there that is a little bit obvious, but all of that comes to life immediately when we start to get to a period like COVID, where again, you get to a point where technology is just so required and not everybody has access to that. So there were a couple of, I'll call it knee-jerk reactions as an oversimplified way to say how we reacted quickly. But immediately it was, for a fairly massive company, let's give as much as we possibly can immediately to places that don't have access. We know there's this digital divide, and our mission has been trying to shrink that. COVID has made that even more pronounced. So immediately it was, upwards of $1 million to North Carolina K through 12 schools, 400,000 Chromebooks to the state of California. There's probably $1 million worth of Land School license which is our virtual platform to deliver content in a virtual classroom sort of an environment. We just decided we just went as crazy as we could, immediately as we could, to give as much back as we could. But that wasn't enough. And then the PC ecosystem was overtaken by this immediate demand that has surfaced as a result that we still can't address as an ecosystem. That will take months to fill up the full needs of all these things, and that's a continual work in progress. And I would say that the third part that we've learned is, okay, let's assume for a second, we've done some good things to fight COVID. We're doing all the things we can to make sure that technology gets into the hands of everybody. Then you've got to figure out, holy smokes, in this new world, how do you now adapt to use this technology as a student and as a teacher? So, I could go on and on with an open microphone on this topic, but hopefully that gives you just a bit of color of a day in the life of Lenovo and how we've tried to do everything possible, to address this. And we still have a lot of work to do, and it's going to be the full course of the year until we borderline get this right.
Thanks, Matt. I mean, I think, at the end of the day, leadership matters. So I so appreciate what you're doing and how Lenovo as a company and all of your employees have stood up to this test. The pivot point, too, is the same kind of pressures that you feel inside a school district where you have thousands of students, uneven access, trying to push out quality at the same time. Yvonne, what would you kind of jump out at you? What are the big challenges that you face that I think you've addressed quite well, trying to get content in the hands of all kids?
Right. So one of the first things, and thank you, JD, for having me here this afternoon. One of the first things that we did, that for the first time in 50 years, I didn't get a spring break. And that was a small price to pay, because we had the good fortune of having that whole week so that we turned it on a dime. We started creating classes that could be done either online or paper pencil. We invited the students to come back after spring break to pick up any of their workbooks, any of their Chromebooks, any devices that we had. We invited them back. Right after that, we realized that we had classes going. We had our curriculum. We went ahead and we translated it into 7 different languages, and then realized, wow, connectivity, that's the big issue. So our superintendent jumped right in with something he calls Operation Connectivity. We made sure we bought as many hotspots as we could for the students. So the board approved emergency measures to get those hotspots in the hands of children. So Dr. Hinojosa started Operation Connectivity at 3 levels. First of all, the city. The city jumped in with both feet, helping us in every way possible. Dallas Community Colleges jumped in. Chamber of Commerce jumped in. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Spectrum. Every entity. That wasn't enough. The state came back and awarded him and our Commissioner of Education, Marath, in Texas, as co-chairs of Operation Connectivity. So what the idea here is to make sure that connectivity is akin to the same thing as any just basic necessities: water, running water, gas, public transportation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is social justice. Children without connectivity are the ones that were being left behind. So we reached out even further. We had PBS give us some spots Univision gave us some spots. So we started creating lessons. The teachers came through for us like I've never seen. So every morning from 7 to 8:30, the students had lessons that they could watch on their TV.
Nice.
PBS is going to run our math lessons all during the summer because we found out something. NEA had run studies on what would it be like when the students got back after COVID-19. Well, we found out that math was going to be the biggest problem. So we've done a couple of things with math. We've done a bridge for math so that we're targeting some of the areas that were most hit by the lack of connectivity and devices, making sure that the children in those schools have it. So we're running a bridge program for them. Additionally, PBS is going to run our math lessons from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. running math lessons every hour, every half hour, so that every grade level will be there. We're making sure that the students will have their devices to work with. Right now, as I conferred with our chief of technology in the district, the two things that we're looking at is an upgrade from our Chromebooks, because our Chromebooks are fine for certain things, but they can't handle the CAD software. Anything that is more sophisticated for our students in our academies, in our NAF academies that are going into engineering. So that's one thing we're working for. And the other thing we're working toward is to get a stronger connectivity. Because even though we have hotspots for them, we found out that by putting Wi-Fi on buses and parking the buses in critical places, students would have a stronger connection. So just to wrap that around, it's a connectivity, it's the devices, but getting creative at every corner. And we were very fortunate that at every level we've come through. Dr. Hinojosa has also taken this nationally. So Council of Great City Schools, the American Association of School Administrators, as well as the Council of Chief School Officers have really come in to support this effort. So it's an ongoing effort for connectivity.
That's awesome. You know, it's only natural I would see if Nicki's on the line with Verizon. I mean, connectivity seems to be a fundamental barrier that has to be solved to get this done. And we've known for years, right, that before there was COVID, there was summer and kids would lose ground, right? They would lose time on learning. And those students that had enriched summer activities kept going. So apply COVID to this moment. It's how do we enrich this very difficult time? And technology is clearly seen as one of the solutions, but without connectivity, your resources are so limited that it causes that uneven deployment of opportunity that I worry about desperately in terms of when we come out the other side. I want to make sure all of our kids haven't been left behind. So, Nicki, are you on the line?
Yes. Can you hear me, JD?
I can.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks again for the opportunity to join you. Audio only today, but thanks to be with you and these great panelists that you've assembled. So, boy, where to start? I mean, the events in the news recently, you know, starting with the global pandemic, moving to racial injustice and the protests, you know, just to take a step back, it really puts into perspective how important connectivity is. And it's already been discussed here on this meeting. But sometimes it is as basic as a phone call or a text that can really be the difference between life and death, literally. But it can also be the lifeline for opportunity. And we've all experienced that, as Matt, you know, pointed out at the onset, you know, to be able to work from home, to be able to connect, and now to be able to learn from home is more important than ever. And, you know, while Verizon is, you know, we're proud to be the largest provider of wireless service in the United States and the largest rural provider, but it really doesn't mean that our job is anywhere near done. Parts of this country still face challenges with basic coverage and affordability.
Nicki, I know you have been such an advocate on connectivity, not just in terms of opportunity, but how we pivot from traditional internships, for example, to more virtual learning opportunities. And I know it's in the heart of NAF that this private-public partnership can't just be about getting content around education out to young people, but to get real experiences where they can use that content and apply it in ways that are meaningful, can change the world, can change their trajectory, can change their life. So, Nicki, I know you're a huge advocate for that, and we are fortunate to have you as part of our thought partnership to try to take this to the next step. So let me pivot to Art. Jennings, Missouri. How you doing? There he is. So what do you think?
I'm doing. Oh, so much to say. I appreciate you first and foremost, my sister, JD. You are an amazing leader. I love you for who you are. And I always tell you that because it's sincere and the world needs to know it. And I'll say it like we do when we're talking on the phone. This place that we're in right now, I say welcome home to many people, because some of us have been in this situation. We've had the pressure on our shoulder for years before COVID and years before the protests. And now you have a lot more people who have now joined the struggle that you have been engaged in for decades and that I have been engaged in for decades. So it's cool to have a lot of new friends. And so I say that because that's the truth about who we are. So let me put it in like terms like only I can. We in Jennings closed the digital divide by giving every kid a computer and a laptop because it was the right thing to do before COVID. So when COVID happened, we were ready. And COVID simply exposed the inequities that are in the world, the injustices, the inequities and the misbalance and the power structures that lead to disproportionate populations being overly affected. COVID affected everybody equally, but as far as being able to hurt anyone equally, but the impact was disproportionate. And we've seen that across the nation. So those of us that's been prepared, excuse my phone, for the inequities way beforehand, we were a little ahead of the game. So we had the one-to-one already established. We also had a situation where the governor put us as leaders of the task force for COVID. So I had the privilege of giving him the recommendation to close all schools in the state of Missouri on the day of April 9th that we did for the remainder of the school year in the state of Missouri. So there's a few other points that I need to mention besides the fact that COVID just made very clear the inequities that are present within various homes. And it's not a black-white thing. It's a poverty thing for sure. And it's a many multiplicities of oppressions that we are struggling to make equal. But here's another one. Mental health. Leadership matters, wellness matters, and mental health matters. During COVID, everyone has been traumatized in some way. Before COVID, about 7 out of 10 Americans have been traumatized and experienced trauma. Now, during COVID, I separate everything into BC for before COVID, AC for after COVID, which would be 2 years from now, and DC for during COVID. So wellness and mental health matters. Connectivity is the way to stay well. So even though we're socially distancing, we shouldn't be distancing only socially. This is really distance socializing. And that's what cell phones, laptops, and Chromebooks and things of that nature allows you to do. It allows you to have distance socializing because we have to be connected to each other as humans. But here's some other things we've done. We've been giving 100,000 pounds of food away every really day at our 2 grocery stores that we own and operate as a school system. We have 2 health-based clinics and the only dental clinic in the state of Missouri at a school. We've been doing COVID testing at our clinics, which our communities needed. And all of these things show connectivity. We've been giving lessons on PBS in STEM areas as well as language arts and more, where I had teachers on PBS to do that in the state of Missouri. We've also been working to redefine what 21st century skills are. Because before COVID, BC, we had a template for 21st century skills. But in DC, during COVID, and AC, the world has changed. COVID changed us. And it was easier to stop everything because of COVID than it is going to be to restart and reemploy or recreate things in this new reality. So what are the 21st thinking skills that's needed for DC during COVID and for AC? It definitely includes technology, creative thinking, problem solving, but it also includes things like remote internships that I'm so thankful to Lenovo and to Matt and to his team, as well as KPMG, for allowing our students to be a part of that national program that you, JD, led. It's a new 21st century skill requirement. And even if it's not equal to what internships used to be before COVID BC, the reality is that COVID is going to have us be here in this situation for about 2 years into a vaccine or into herd immunity. It's going to take to May 22 approximately. Even if there's a vaccine created by the end of this year, the bottom line is people aren't going to feel safe taking it until they know that no one's going to die from that any sooner than others.
Right.
So thank you for the leadership. I appreciate the internships and more and the opportunity.
Thank you for your enthusiastic support. It's so, I can feel it all the way through. I can feel it. Art, appreciate it. You know, it comes to mind for me, both on Art's comments and Yvonne's comments, when they were talking about PBS and instruction and how we use technology to push content out. We have parents all over this country who have been now put in the role of teaching, and are scrambling, and they're trying to figure out how to do right by their students. And now, as we start to open up, now they're struggling with who takes care of my students while I try to get forced to go back to work. So how are you in the school districts navigating the new role of parents, new parental instruction? They are also the employees of the Verizons and the Lenovos. So they fill a bunch of different roles here. How can we leverage that in a way that's healthy for everybody?
So in Dallas, JD, what we're doing right now is two things. We're working internally to have lessons that we can either push out through the Chromebooks, now that every child has one, either through Chromebooks, or also we're having at school type lessons built. So we're building lessons that can be delivered in many different ways. That's one thing. Secondly, we're inquiring through our parents to see how many of them feel that their children would be comfortable in sending their children back, and some of them have to send their children back. So
Right.
we're surveying parents. We're pushing it out in all the different languages, like I said earlier, 7 different languages, so that we can hear directly from the parents. So right now we've got even almost like census takers. We're going door to door to make sure that we have that information back from parents, because we have to be flexible in the schools. If they have to send the children to school because they have no other place to go, and we want the children to keep learning and be safe, we've got that for them. But if they just do not feel comfortable with us, we also have the capability of pushing it out digitally.
Art, similar, same with you, pretty much?
Yes. I think you hit it on the head when you say and ask how you're transitioning teachers to, or parents to, the role of teachers. I remind parents that you were and are your child's first teacher. In most instances, parent, surrogate parent, guardians, they're the first teacher. And I share with them that this is not the equivalent of homeschooling, where you create the content, that you make the content, and that you choose the content regardless of state standards or the resources. And I explained to them that while you are engaged in the process, that's important. Your child knows you best and better than we know your child. So communicate to them. It's about you breaking down the knowledge, and we will give you every tool possible. Now, granted, that's for the cases where your preschoolers, your kindergartens, your first graders and second graders who are learning on PBS and seeing a show and then having a parent articulate to them the core standards that a teacher just said on a screen. They need that interaction at those levels. At the high school grade levels, at the middle school levels, and even third grade and on, you have things like Zoom classrooms, Google Classrooms, Ingenuity, and so forth. And students are accessing that. And so I believe that we have an opportunity to change what education has been constructed. I applaud Dr. Durant for being in the field for 50 years, because that's commendable. And I don't even know if I have that in me in the system per se. That's commendable. But I know that she's excited, like all get out, like I am, that education was not created to meet every child's need at the speed of the need. That's equity, meeting every need at the speed of the need. We've more so been about equality, giving adequate education to all, meeting towards the middle. Now we're forced to be about equity. And that's a first in the history of the United States. And so it's exciting to be a part of this history making. And it's also a huge challenge. And I'm up for the challenge because we were born for this moment.
That's awesome. So back to our business partners. Obviously, Matt, you and Nicki both have employees that are parents that have kids that they're now teaching at home at the same time. What kinds of conversations are you having inside your companies around the transition of teaching and learning as a result of this moment?
Well, as a proud father of a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old that has lived on an airplane for the last 15 years, I can personally say it's an adjustment, and certainly for an organization that is very remote and very committed, and it's a high impact, very fast business. It's been a challenge, and honestly, from an employee standpoint, what we've said is, look, everybody take a deep breath, and we need to allow employees to basically structure in their day time for their family. There is a green block on my calendar every day that says time with Charlie, time with cause. That's my son and my daughter's name. And we've encouraged that for every single employee. And, burnout is really easy. I mean, I personally sit in front of my Think Smart View and my webcam here for at least 10 hours, 12 hours a day. It's actually more grueling for everybody than it was previously. Add on to that, the dynamic of having kids in the home and having to help educate kids in the home. It's just been it's been a journey. And as a company, we've also tried to afford technology for our employees that we deem as so critical. And then just the added flexibility and understanding that says, look, you have to take time, you have to build it into your day, and we've got your back in order to go do that. A couple things I'm compelled. I was scribbling a few different notes, listening very intently to Dr. McCoy and Dr. Durant, very articulate, and it just some things I wanted to draw some data around to further color what they were saying. Our data indicates that 17% of the U.S. population has absolutely zero access to compute, specifically in the home. Another 18%, and Nicki is, by the way, I'm head of the Nicki Palmer fan club. She doesn't realize that, but it's just so bad she's not here with us because she's an amazing speaker and so bright. 18% we believe don't have access to connectivity. And then there's another 20% in addition to that just has some form of good enough compute and maybe mediocre connectivity. So just to draw some data around the size of this problem, here we are, a first world country, and that almost defines the digital divide there. And I think I will never speak for Nicki, but I think where we lost her was, how do you proliferate this as fast as you possibly can? And so much of this has to do with financial means and cost points and things like that. And if you look at what's happened in the computing industry, Chromebooks aren't that old. That's a 9-year-old technology. But one of the reasons that took off so aggressively is because you have price points that are $300 lower than what they used to be. And matter of fact, just today I was on the phone with Microsoft. Let's not forget the other big software vendor out there about how we all recognize we have this digital divide and what we can do further to take cost out of technology. Because frankly, a PC is probably more critical than a textbook. It is the access to information. Pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, I love the BC, DC, and AC. That's very smart. But look, I think the entire industry is committed to that. And again, I don't speak to our competitors aren't bad people; they're great people, and we're all in this together. And then, of course, there's this dynamic when you think about sort of distance learning and collaboration. And one thing I wanted to call out is it's not a big enough staff, but we have a team of people that are former educators. That have done a webinar and have a toolkit on Lenovo.com with Google and Microsoft on just how we think through the platforms that can be used to help distance learning and some of the changes that we see. And I'm sure I will not speak as an academic here, but thinking about the dynamics of learning together versus learning separately and how that manifests itself at a young age or an older age is just a problem that we're working together to try to solve. And think about whether you're learning on your own or collectively in a classroom, and how, even having a rising first grade daughter, that's one of the challenges at the younger age is at what point in time is there appropriate interaction with the teacher? Right. And then what happens when you sort of, go away from that. And even in some of the best schools that you would argue in the country, they haven't figured out how to do this perfectly at all. So the social divide really doesn't have a lot to do with just the ability to get used to this new world of distance learning that I think is going to be a journey for all of us. But what I would call upon is just like ourselves and our competitors and ecosystem partners is, I think we would do ourselves a good service to employ more educators that have lived a day in the life that can help us build the right tools and help us build the right software suites to really understand, how do you push content out? How do you manage content? How can you virtually be there if a student has a question? How do you make sure a student's not slacking around when, he or she should be focused on the problem at hand, but in a remote, world? So I guess what I'm trying to do is just reassure, our guests and also our educators that we recognize that there's a problem. It actually transcends the socioeconomic divide here, where we just have to get used to a new world of learning, and we recognize the criticality to proliferate that and make it, as near perfect as we can.
Awesome. I think that the thing that I'm so proud of what you're saying is the underwrite. Everything you say talks about it as a we, not a me. Everything's about companies plural, it's about communities plural, it's about families, it's about the fact that just because you have an employee doesn't mean that they aren't also a parent, that they aren't also tied to a community set of activities. So I think that the answer is in this public-private partnership strategy, and I think if nothing else, COVID stopped the world in a moment for all of us in a way that reinforces what we've known for a long time. I think what I worry about on the equity front and the access front is making sure that we get those robust, rich experiences to all of our kids. And I guess I ask Yvonne and Art to say, if you had to put a number on it, what percentage do you think of your student body right now is disconnected and you wish they were connected?
Oof, yeah. In talking to my technology chief colleague the other day, he said, Yvonne, we have probably 30% of our children right now are not connected. And this is in every avenue that we've taken in calling parents, visiting parents, right. Every avenue we've taken, we still have not reached and have.
So what's that number? 30% is what?
Maybe about 600 some children.
Yeah.
So it's a huge number that we're not yet. You're right, JD. And that rests heavy on my mind that we still have that many children out there that are not connected.
Art?
Yeah. I love JD and your question, because I was ready to teach your audience about the power of connectivity, to say that Nicki is powerful and she's amazing. She wouldn't have been on this panel. But the fact that she couldn't connect shows you the power of what we're talking about, that we're missing. Yes. We're missing all of her content and she's helpless and not able to get on. And your question has made it about how many kids, what's your number? That's what every leader should learn from you. From this call, demand to know the number, search the number, make your superintendents get the number, get the resources to make it happen, because that's what it's going to take. Now, me personally, I have to say we have an advantage because we're smaller. We literally have only 20 kids who have no connection. And so, but my zip code of 63136, that's my district, part of the city, we literally had 11,000 kids within the zip code that I still serve that don't have connection. They're not under my direct leadership. So that's then why we have to go to the state level to say, let's work with AT&T, let's work with Spectrum, let's work with T-Mobile. Because one thing most of these teenagers at least have, and many of the parents, is this. And this has built in it, this has a hotspot built in it. And if you can get a free hotspot to any cell phone, then you've done something. But that takes a redistribution of resources, and that's at the heart of it. So most of the advantages are for those who've done, like you wisely suggested, partner with private corporations to already get resources. We now need to redistribute those resources to people who may not have ever had that access.
So to that point, Art, one of the things that came up in the phone calls that generated this opportunity to kind of have a conversation and let the world watch us while we talk was realizing that, to your point, the phone may be the device in a family. But then we have to also understand that in that family, there could be 4 or 5 or 6 people needing to use that same singular device. So what that does, I think, for us is if we're going to push content out, we're going to use technology to try to level the playing field, we've got to think around content in soundbite pieces in much smaller doses than we would normally do in a standalone classroom in order to accommodate the realities of what people have access to.
That's right.
Would you agree?
So true. That's spot on. I can't even add anything to it. It's spot on.
But the politics, right? So instead, what I hear from parents is, well, what are the schools doing, man? They will only teach my student for 20 minutes. Well, guess what? 20 minutes is the dosage that they have to kind of distribute in order to get equity out to everybody. But the perception of the beneficiary, the parent looking, saying that's not good enough. Schools aren't doing what they should do. We've got to have a really big dialogue about what equity and education looks like in a community that is not your job or my job, it's our job.
Yeah. That's
You're right.
Just jumping on that, like as you just said, the diversity that we have in our schools also is from the very, very wealthy to the very, very poor. So we've got that diversity. However, the majority of our students are low socioeconomic status. So their number one concern for the first month and a half was food. We've got to have food. So just like Dr. McCoy did, we jumped on that bandwagon. In fact, we're still delivering food. We're still offering food for our families. Secondly, we're now looking not just at delivering lessons, but the quality of the lessons that we're delivering. Now we're looking at high cognitive demand lessons instead of just pushing something out so that we can check the box and say, yeah, we offered that. We're looking at making sure that we have more devices in the home so that it becomes more of a one-on-one. Initially, it was enough. Yeah, we've got at least 2 devices in our home. Not anymore. We've got to make sure that every child has that device. So the third thing is we're now upgrading the devices of our high school students who are also doing dual credit with our community college. So for all of our P-Tech students that are also going to college, we had to have an upgrade on their devices. So in a way, we're talking everything from food to high class problems of getting stronger devices in the hands of our students.
Yeah, I would add to this. So I want to take it to another place. And what you said is true, Dr. Durant. So when I say we're working on new 21st century skills, this is what it means. So there's going to be a need for some people to physically be in school for a variety of reasons. And that includes neglect. If they're not there, they will be subject to no adult being around because they are the essential workers. Again, only 1 out of 5 African Americans can work remotely, according to data. Only 1 out of 6 Latinos. So that means 4 out of 5 African Americans and 5 out of 6 Latinos are essential to going every day. Right. Therefore, you need some childcare. Education is serviced as childcare, is served as that, and that's regardless. So that answers the question to these 15-minute chunks not being adequate for the parent because they needed you more than just knowledge. They needed you for more than just knowledge. They needed you for actual childcare, right, which is in the constitution of most states called loco parentes. You're in place of the parent, literally. So that's an issue where some schools will have to have accommodations and physically open for the sake of that. Some have to open for civility because truly an educated electorate is essential for democracy. We see this now with protests on the streets, but protests only get your attention. It's democracy that actually makes a movement for a new covenant with America. And so to close down the very engine and system that educates the electorate is going to be harmful for the democracy. So you need something for civility. Thirdly, what we have to talk about is teachers are at most risk. You're going to see research come out, if you haven't already seen it, saying that young people have died less. school-age children is still in the country at 0.0% death rate. It's the adults that's going to ultimately have to face life or death just to come to work. So in many instances, we have to have the courage of a firefighter, where you may be walking to a fire called your classroom. Right. The only thing that may put out that fire is distance. And the only thing that may help is a mask, but it's going to take courage. And so really, when you ask, what does equity look like? It looks like our system being a public servant to really massage itself to a new way that gives the people all of that. A little bit in person, a little bit online for those who can do it, a little bit of hybrid, blended, and ultimately all of it based off of what students need first, and not even the adults who are at greatest risk. That takes courage. That's where we're at in our area.
Well said. Very well said. I mean, I think, you know, I continue to maintain this level of optimism because of people like you, people like Matt, people like Nicki, who are willing to not just wait for somebody else to solve the problem, but instead lean in and aspire to be all for all that we could be as an organization. I want to offer Mark the opportunity to weigh in if there are questions that have come out through the YouTube channel from others that Matt or Yvonne could answer.
I appreciate it, JD. Yeah, this is actually perfect timing. I'm gonna
oh, good.
I'm gonna bring a couple of questions up here. There are a lot of questions on connectivity, and I'm going to bring Matt up and see if we can't get to some of that. So there are a lot of questions about where the issues are in connectivity. So here's one. From Phil Lohr asks, is the major issue a lack of PC or broadband connectivity of the device? And there are several like this. Keisha Taylor has, is upgrading devices the issue, and several others are sort of chiming in. What are your thoughts on that, Matt and Dr. McCoy? Are the things that you're noticing in your community that are more related to hardware versus broadband or vice versa?
Shall I start that on a couple, Dr. McCoy? All right, so here's the look. I on the connectivity piece, let me just give you our data, and it really is about a 1 point differential as in terms of what's the problem, devices or connectivity. 17% of the problem is devices, 18% is connectivity, and usually those two things don't overlap very much. They're usually very, very much in tandem. So I would say it's equal parts. Certainly going out and most times going out and acquiring a PC is probably a little bit, I'll use air quotes, easier than putting up a new tower and putting new plumbing into the earth to get broadband access into a home. So I would certainly qualify the fix in connectivity as obviously much more difficult. And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but then there's this other issue in the PC world right now that is, and a lot of folks have mentioned it, this concept about it used to be one PC in the home and now it's one PC per person. That is not a US dynamic, only that is a global statement. And so we're seeing this huge surge in demand as every household tries to figure out a way to get one PC per person, which is just, the numbers are of course staggering. That's going to make it more difficult in the interim for us to get our hands on traditional Chromebooks, for example, just because there's been such an about face to something like that. But
look what it does to connectivity. Right? Look what happens to connectivity as soon as we add all those numbers into households. The value of having everyone having that without the connectivity being solved at the same time, everything gets shut down.
Well, can you break the internet? That was a conversation we started to have when we saw everybody all of a sudden vacate and work from home and go to school from home. And I'm not smart enough to answer that question, but it's people we're obviously concerned about it. But the one thing I will say is, as we think about, as a device guy, I heard Dr. Durant talk about we need something that affords richer experiences for students that are doing CAD drawings or things like that. If we're in a school district, or we're in a world where we have the means to be able to do something that's a little bit richer in experience, I would argue, and again, we'll eat it. We're not making money in education, that we mutually sort of think about upgrading those areas to make sure that we save the more affordable devices for districts and areas that need it more dearly. If everybody in the world goes out there and buys $200 Chromebooks, we won't have enough for the end of the year. But if by design we have certain areas that are saying, hey, I might need something a little bit more robust, then that's going to free up every single unit that can be taken advantage of by a socioeconomic that might not have the luxury to go do that. Just a food for thought. I know budgets are tight everywhere, trust me, but it certainly would be a lot easier on providers like myself and our competitors if we had a full myriad of devices that we could sell them versus one or two.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know, some of the things that I've been thinking about is how we could take some of what we know matters pre-COVID in terms of the personalization, the social capital development that young people need. And with COVID, that personal connection has been snapped off and reduced. Many places are no longer doing internships. God bless Verizon and others who are willing to do virtual internship reviews, but not everybody's capable of doing that. What do we need to do in terms of developing core content in a way that can be pushed out through technology that brings some relevance and some of that social capital to our young people? It's what I worry the most about. It's not the getting what the knowledge is. It's the relationship building that builds powerful social skills that play exactly as Dr. McCoy mentioned around what a democracy looks like. It's about a community, and communities are built on people, not just knowledge and things. So how we think about NAF and tools and materials and getting those real life experiences out is what I worry a lot about, because I think it's the missing magic that turns kids around and sets them on a trajectory for a really powerful future.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I found our teachers were really willing to learn how to help students connect through their chat rooms in the Google Classrooms. So as we built our Google Classrooms, teachers learning how to bring more students together and how to help them develop those skills in doing group projects together, because that will keep them talking, that will keep them connected, and stop any kinds of just individual type of assignments to our students. So we've had to pivot into how do we create lessons now that do connect the students one to another. But another part of this that I think is equally as important is the fact that we have put out there telemedicine and teletherapy, and we're finding that through our teletherapy and our telecommunications with our students, we're having a higher percentage of our students keep their appointments than when they had to go in person. So, we're thinking, well, the stigma's not there. Well, people don't see you in a waiting room, so they're keeping their appointments. The same with our teachers in the training. Now, when we have 900 teachers sign up for sessions, we have 900 teachers show up. We've never had that in the past. So there's something to be said for speech therapy versus the teletherapy system, because once that child has their device and they can count on that speech teacher being there with them, they will continue with us. They'll hold on with us. So those are the very, very specific areas that we're very careful to make sure that we continue serving our children with.
Yeah. So
it's interesting to me if you look at this camera, right? So we've got Missouri, we've got Texas, we've got North Carolina, we got California. If Nicki was online, it'd be New Jersey. So we're all over the country. What I would ask each of you to tell me is your projected prediction of when will school open, and what will it look like?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Let me take my ball out.
Yeah. So that's a great question. That's the domain that I like playing in. And yeah, for a lot of reasons, that's the domain right there. And so let me just underline a few things that were said earlier before I answer that. There are going to be connectivity issues, and as you stated, the number of devices affect that. But I want to remind your educators on the line about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As
Yes.
Dr. Durant pointed out, food, physiological, shelter, roof over your head. Some people lost that from COVID. So you take steps back from unemployment, the highest unemployment rate, so forth. So Maslow's before Bloom is the key. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that. And that's right on the point. So first, physiological. Then you have the issue of like safety and well-being. Then you have the issue of connectivity, belonging, and love. Then you have the issue of esteem, like what you get when you're in a safe environment with the democracy, where you can be with someone and feel like you're loved and feel like you belong, and now you esteem it. Then you get to self-actualization, like that true internalization that I know that I know. I know that I know, and I know together that we are stronger than me. And so now that we've established that is the psyche of the human mind, DC is during COVID and BC is before. It was easy before COVID. But it's going to be difficult DC. The glimmer of hope for me is that you do have a lot of introvert students who are more engaged now during DC because of now the feeling of freedom of not having the pressure on themselves and so forth to do certain things or be received certain ways and so forth. And they are showing up more, not only to tele appointments and medicine appointments, but also to Google Classrooms and Zoom classrooms and so forth. And they're producing more. They'll do more assignments and skip the lecture. So competency-based grading, where you get credit without the seat time in class, is that shift in thinking that 15 minutes of lessons is fine if you only needed 5 anyway, because you already knew it. And so competency-based grading, giving an assessment to start and not teaching something just because the state said you had to, or your superintendent said you had to, because of mastery-based learning. They mastered it the first time. So don't go through the other 5 lessons. So when you ask the question of when will school start, it begs the question of what will it look like? And so I believe that different states and different regions are going to start at different times on the basis of higher concentrations of transmission. One of the things we did was I had a team of 30 of my staff become contact tracers as teachers. And I encourage you to go on to Johns Hopkins University course for contact tracing. It's still free. It took me about 6 hours to complete. It took some of my teachers, the longest person, it took about 2 days to complete, but I'm a certified contact tracer. It's going to take that. If you're going to bring students back to school in whatever month, August or whatever, you need to have that new knowledge. Don't cop out. Don't punk out. Be a lifelong learner, because it really is a life or death matter now. So let's get to it. And so my team has done it. But when is also this. I have a social responsibility, a moral obligation to be socially just. So I'm started in July because of that civility thing. I have students coming July 6th. And I'm doing it in a way that they're going to live. My teachers are going to live, and my students are going to live, and they're going to get back some of that time that they may have lost. And then we're going to start on time. But it's those 3 options: some physical in person, some blended, where it's an A-day, B-day schedule to keep the capacity at 50% throughout the whole school year, and then some 100% virtual because they're at high risk. And I believe that we'll have most of our schools starting by September. But research is going to come out and say, hey, kids are not going to be at risk as much and so forth. And there's going to be pressure. And so just be prepared to be courageous.
Yeah, so as I look at the state of Texas, the great Republic of Texas, West Texas school districts, we have El Paso, Isleta Socorro. They're planning on starting July 27th, and they're starting virtually. We're going to wait till August the 17th. That's our start date for our students. And as I said earlier, we're going to give the students the option, or the families the option. Those families who absolutely need us to have the students there, we're going to take them. But those families that have students that are fragile or they're afraid to come back, we'll also serve them virtually. Now, 2 things that are happening right now is that we've developed a playbook, and our safety playbook looks very different than BC, Doc. BC, that used to be a different kind of safety. Now our safety playbook talks about the type of cleansing that has to happen in the schools, the covers, the masks that we'll have for students, all the PPE equipment that we'll be providing our teachers, our principals. Everyone will have that equipment readily. And the other playbook that we're right now in the throes of finishing is our playbook for instruction. And as I said earlier, we're planning on coming back or doing virtual, or doing having the students come in the elementary up through 12 years old, and having the upper grades or the middle and high school students do virtual lessons. So we've got different configurations. Next Thursday, we'll be finding out from our commissioner what the state of Texas is going to be offering the school districts. But that's where we are right now.
Excellent. Matt, a comment just came up. I believe it was from Phil. And if I get this wrong, Phil, let me know. But I think it's a good shout out, Matt. I'd love your response as a NAF board member and a CEO of a major company who's in this space. The point is saying virtual workforces, working remotely, here to stay. We're not going back. It may look a little different, but the remote world, the technology basis is here to stay. So what should that mean in terms of what we think about the work that we're doing in preparing students for that future ready status?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know Phil Laura, but he's speaking my language with all of his comments there. So we should just give him my email address and we can and he's also kind of a mind reader, because to marry this comment with the question about when we go back to school, which of course I'm totally unequipped to answer, I agree with the sentiment that is the following. This is good practice. I know it's different, and I know it's muscle memory that doesn't exist, that needs to be built. But interacting as we are right now, interacting on a day-to-day basis in a virtual environment is absolutely here to stay. As we think about our reentry into the new normal, I don't think we'll have a full departure from the way it used to be. In other words, everybody works from home and offices go away. I don't think it works that way for us, but certainly there will be incrementally, that's even an understatement, more flexibility in how it is that we work. And if you think about the effectivity and the intimacy even of virtual interaction, I mean, people are seeing you in your home at 8 o'clock in the morning with a baseball cap on. I mean, people are, their kids are running into your office and they're saying hi to 200 people on a larger call, whatever it might be. There's something very interactive and intimate about this virtual environment that we're in, and productivity has gone off the charts to the tune of it being almost a problem. We're having burnout is existing like it never has before, and we have to encourage and remind people, hold the phone here. Drop off. It's Friday. It's 4 o'clock. You've been on the video horn for 50 hours this week. Take a pause, and we'll see you Monday afternoon. Take Monday morning to exercise and just relax. There is significant burnout in this system. And you and I have talked about some of the mental health aspects of this. And if I think about the other beauty of this virtual environment is, for example, at Lenovo, every Friday we have entire company all hands. So for North America, there's about 1,800 people that jump on the call. On an average Friday, it's maybe 1,600, 1,400. It's just about everybody. And it's 30 minutes. And you cover the topics of the week. You do a quick business recap. We show some goofy pictures of some of the team meetings that have had all day. We have tearful conversations. 2 weeks ago, it was a lot of tears and a lot of pain that was shared. And I would argue, even though we're not in the office together, this bond and this closeness that we have experienced is unlike, it's undescribable. And as I think through that in a corporate world, I wish so terribly as well that my kids felt that connected in school. And I don't know how that comes to life in curriculum if there are structured Zoom meetings, and maybe that exists at higher grades or other schools, but there's absolutely a way to grow close in a virtual environment. And I think that's a great skill for our kids to practice, for all ages. So I could go on on that one, and I hope that colors in Phil's comments /question.
JD?
Yes.
So from the control room, I have some questions here lined up for different participants, and if you're okay with it, I'll start shooting. All right. So
sure.
I have a great one for Dr. McCoy. Tiffany asks, how can we change the policies that require students to meet seat time versus, as you stated, graded on competency? Who would you start that advocacy effort with?
Sure. And I'm going to hit about 6 questions with that one question, because I saw the questions, starting with this one. So first, every state has a state statute around competency based grading already. If you look in your CTE statutes and your departments of education, look at CTE for career technical education, and you should see competency-based grading as a part of that. And you simply, if you don't have a district policy already based off of those state statutes that's been approved by various administrations, but you should have a district policy on it that says competency-based grading is permissible. Competency-based grading is permissible. So bottom line is, go find your policy or ask your principal and or superintendent to give you that policy from the CTE section, and then ultimately read it well and start to use it. A lot of people feel scared and afraid to start it because it's different, but now it's necessary. And so competency-based grading is simply where you give the final grade, the final test or district approved assessment that covers all the standards. And if a kid scores a passing score as set and determined by your district, then they get the credit. For our district, 70 is passing for pass-fail grade, 80 gives you a B, and a 90 gives you an A. So you get an actual A if you didn't sit one day in that seat, but pass the district-approved algebra in the course exam, for instance, for Algebra 1. So that's on that one. On the other issues of how do you have like post-secondary support for high schoolers and so forth in this era, because I saw that as a question. My whole point is this, and mental health support, because that was another question. How do you help social and emotional development? Teachers are going to have to become life coaches. Yeah. There's other duties as basically designated or as described, other duties as assigned is in everyone's contract, administrators and teachers. And teachers, as well as counselors, as well as principals, as well as secretaries, we all must become life coaches, which means that you're giving that 30-minute mental health, mind, body, soul. I would ask you to look up We Teachers Hub, which gives you a list of resources for mental health, separating it to mind, body, and spirit. And you spend a little bit of time every day in each one of those rooms. There's really 4 rooms. There's the room of the mind, the room of the body, the room of the spirit, the room of the soul. And you need to spend a little bit of time in every one of those rooms, 30 minutes, an hour. Self-biofeedback, that's essential. You as teachers, you as secretaries, you as principals, all of us, even as a superintendent, I lead mine every week in something called Managing and Maintaining Well-Being and Mental Health with HR. You have to address every part of that room and be a life coach. We had our first kid go to Harvard during COVID situation, perfect score on the ACT. And bottom line is, we were being life coaches the whole way through. This kid and our first kid in our district to get a perfect on the ACT and go to Harvard. But that's because we shifted from our job and our position to a life coach.
Beautiful. I have a question for you and Dr. Durant. Cindy Brown asks about what strategies districts are using to mentor our youth and address the social emotional needs of students when school reopens.
So there's several things that we've got in the hopper right now. Our teachers this summer, as I said, are going through training, and most of the training has been social emotional. And one of the things we're finding out is that when those teachers are signing up, they're really wanting to know, what can I do for my students when we get back together? What is it that I need to really support them with? So that's the first thing that we really cherish. We really want to get going. The second thing is at our at-home learning hub, which is the on the opening page of the Dallas ISD. There's a portion there. You go to at-home learning. There's SEL. So there, parents can also access all of our SEL activities. And the third thing we do is we have parent-to-parent sessions or straight-out parent sessions, and we walk the parents through all of the free resources that we have for them. For this summer, in addition to SEL, we put in visual and performing arts, open to anybody in the United States or the world that wants to get into our at-home learning. So you have visual and performing arts. We have virtual field trips. These are field trips that the parents can take with their children without leaving home. So we value that aspect of it. So you have visual and performing arts, you have the virtual field trips, you have this SEL, and you also have the physical education. So all of those are available right now to our students and our parents virtually. But in addition to that, teachers are getting trained right now as to how to engage and how to focus on our students' well-being as soon as they get back.
So a quick comment. It seems to me, it feels to me, so I'll do a reality check. It feels to me like Dr. McCoy, Dr. Durant, you're in districts that have leaned in hard on navigating the challenges of COVID, caring about the whole child, families, parents, acknowledging that employers are full partners, they're citizens of your community. But how we get the access knowledge out into our community, what I worry about is everything that you've said is like so powerful. I mean, competency-based learning, get away from seat time, let's measure proficiency. All of these things are really powerful, and it's where I think we ought to be. How do we get in partnership with industry this level of knowledge of details into the community so that parents and students can take advantage of it? I worry that it's going to fly right by the very people who need it the most.
So
That's so true.
So yeah,
Okay,
so can I jump in, Dr. McCoy, and I'll
go ahead, Dr. Red. Go ahead.
So one of the things that was really exciting to me is to see that our teachers were connecting with our students all the way through. And so that connectivity was not always online. It was telephone, it was texting, it was calling, and in some cases, actual visits to the home. So we've connected with a wide variety of our students, and we've almost completed all of that connectivity, which is not all internet connectivity. It's person-to-person connectivity. So that's one way that we've done it, and we did that very purposefully. That was our number one. It was almost as if we were taking roll for all of our students every day. So every day, every child mattered, and every day, every child counted. So that was the first thing that our teachers and our principals, our social workers, everybody went out to do. The second thing that to me is just critical is that we're very, very fortunate to have every one of our TV stations in town are very in tune with what we're doing. So whether it's Univision or any other cable channel that we've got in the city, they have all given us time to make sure that we get these lessons out. And I talked about these lessons earlier. What I didn't say is that in between each lesson, they're also allowing us to have a little public service announcement. So in those public service announcements, we're able to tell the parents other things and other resources that they can access as we go forward.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know, just something that pops up for me big time. I worry about the stuff I'm hearing right now in terms of the economy, the unemployment rates, the people not being able to pay the rent. I mean, we have a financial reaction going on in this country around COVID as well. And I'm starting to hear from states and local districts about budget shortfalls. And I'm also, at the same time I'm hearing that, I'm hearing from educators saying, I didn't sign up for this. So I think we've got this this moment where we're going to have financial pressures as well as a whole new world. We're asking people to lean in partnership with us. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, Matt, for companies to partner with schools to get after kind of the 2.0, the post-COVID experience, and talk about what teaching and learning looks like and the role that employers can have helping schools get to the next level.
Nope, I agree. I think it takes, like so many things in so many activities in our lives right now, it takes a lot of listening first to seek to understand these things. And I'll be candid, as a company, a lot of tech companies out there think they're the smartest people in the world and they just design stuff, but they don't really design stuff in a lot of iterative conversations with people that are going to use their technology. And we've actually prided ourselves a bit on that. And so I think by doing a better job of listening, we can continue to design stuff that addresses all of these problems that we've talked about. And I think it's, if I'm hearing certain themes, it's, distance learning. Let's assume you have the device is still a challenge. So do we have the right distance learning software that can take the curriculum and deploy it in a way that makes sense? And I think the way as an industry we help shape that is by hiring more educators that have lived a day in that life, that can empathize with what works and what doesn't, and use them and work with them in this iterative process to go off and design that. And I think, we've talked a lot about the proliferation of this technology, and that's really on us as an ecosystem to continue to strip out as much cost as we can, and working with partners to say, look, this isn't about money. This is a humanitarian exercise, and we have to continue to think about it that way, where it's life or death, and we've got to find a way to sort of vaccinate, if you will, this community of students that needs to learn and make sure that they can learn in a way that was just as effective as previously. And then also, there's something about this in-person part of being in school that is immersive in two ways. Number one, experiences, and number two, socially. And if I think about full immersion in an in-class environment without leaving it, virtual reality was just starting to sort of pick up before all this stuff started to happen. And that's take a bit of a back seat. So to continue to allow ways to take kids out of the classroom on field trips to the Parthenon or to Mars, without having to put VR headsets on, how do we do that more effectively as an ecosystem? And then also, this social part and the mental health part of this thing is also something I think as an ecosystem we can help address. And all that comes together most effectively if we work more closely with educators and schools. And we have a lot of customers and a lot of partners out there that's what they do. But I think we have to flip this around and just be far more collaborative than ever before. And honestly, it's something that's just very doable, just a slight nuance and an angle that and the way we've been working for all these years.
Yeah, I want to chime in to underscore two things. One, that JD asked about these great ideas, how do you make it put into action? And then Tiffany asked, where do you start? I'm going to be very candid and honest, as always. I'm always honest. I'm going to be forthcoming, which means saying more than you have to. So forthcomingly speaking, when education has to start making the cuts that business has already made with layoffs and furloughs, that's when superintendents and principals start to say, oh yeah, we have to do competency-based grading because we don't have enough staffing to still get the course load for the kid to graduate. And so the attrition will then lead to how do we still meet the education need without hiring new people? And so to Tiffany, I would say start. If you have the burning as a teacher, go tell your principal, I want to do competency-based grading and help me do it. Give me the policy, because they have a responsibility and an oath in their contract to follow policy. So they'll help you before it's a budget cut situation. But the bottom line to JD's question is how do you really get these ideas happening? You have to paint the dreary negative picture that if you don't, then this is the only way you're going to be able to do business, because you're going to only have like a tenth of your resources or half your resources. And to the Matts of the world, who I love, I mean, I love how young Matt looks. That just makes my heart happy. I'm going to be happy for the rest of the week because of his age alone. I have to tell you that. I mean, I really feel that in my spirit. That's in my spirit. I just have to say that. I'm sorry. I'm being forthcoming still.
Well, hey, 41 going on 65. It's all good.
That's a blessing. Stay party one. We need you for those 20 years. but if every one of those Chromebooks that he gave away, 400,000 of them came with the MOU to the districts, which I know they did, that said, we implore and urge you to use competency-based grading and mastery-based learning with these devices, that's the power industry has to move these school districts much faster. And JD's the person to put us in one room to have it be said and supported, where she then steps in and says, yeah, and we'll add our internship virtually by virtue of that usage of this device. Those are the new MOUs. That's the future. That's 21st century. That's how we do it in DC. We're doing COVID.
That's music to my ear. I know Dr. Durant would say the same thing to Matt. She said the same thing to Nicki and I sitting at a table at her school district a couple months back before COVID, where she said, if you really want to leverage systemic change, you as a company and partnering with us as a district can lay out a set of objectives that drive us in the direction we both want to go. But you know what? We aren't universally all on the same page. So use your leverage to drive us in a way that benefits kids. So,
that's right.
So to that point also is that in talking about competency-based in Texas, our superintendent has started that conversation with our commissioner. So that conversation is on the table, but it's going to take pressure from a lot of different points because it is in our state statutes that we're down to minutes based, not just days and hours. We're down to minutes based. So if we're going to change that being from minutes based to competency based, it has to go through change of law, not just policy. That one would be an easy one for us. The harder one is to have the state change it, because if we're not in compliance with them, then we don't get funding from the state. If we don't get the funding, we can't open our schools. So that's one place to go. Is start with a commissioner, but also folks. And I'll say this again. I know JD, you just told it to us, and that is, as a business and districts and community hold hands on this, putting pressure to the right people, putting pressure on the right lawmakers so that they can go back and make those changes. I think that's when this is going to happen, because it will never again be business as usual. We're going to come back it's post-COVID will be something very, very different than what we were before we came into this pandemic.
That's right. That's right.
So,
and that's so correct, Dr. Durant.
You're all rock stars. I love you. You represent why I believe so passionately around public-private partnerships and that leadership matters. You guys are awesome. Our time is already up, so I need us to sign off. But what I want to say is that this is not the end of this conversation. I'm going to lean on all of you to get after this problem, because I think that with the magic that's around this table, this is something that can be solved, and our kids deserve it.
Absolutely.
Totally agree.
Thank you, JD. Thank
Love
you
it.
for the opportunity.
Thank you all.
Art and Matt, I already love you, and I haven't even hugged you yet. So, JD, I'm your ardent fan. So,
as soon as we can travel, I'm going to Missouri and I'm going to Dallas. I can't wait.
Yeah, virtual hugs all around. All right.
That's right. Good to see everybody. Take care. All the best.
That's right. Much love. Thanks, JD. And keep up the great work, Dr. Durant.